Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, editor-in-chief, and today we are talking about contents restoration and handling specific jobs. Today's special guest is Jessica Loveless, and she is the department manager of the contents division at SERVPRO of is it Lehigh County?
Lehigh County, yes.
Lehigh County. She built her department from the ground up. She leads a specialized team who is focused on personal property restoration, offering creative, expert solutions for complex contents challenges. And most importantly, you can always connect with her via LinkedIn anytime. Please welcome Jessica.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me. Content is such a hot topic, and I know it's near and dear to your heart because you had the opportunity to build your own department and kind of
Mhm.
mold it into what it needs to be. So I know when we talk about contents or pack outs, people are like, well, what is that if they don't do it every day? So we're just going to kind of dive into that and feel free to stop me at any time. But my first little quick question that I have for you is what are some of the top strategies for breaking out a context estimate and avoid upfront costs or profit loss on a job? And I only ask that because claims is such a hot topic in this industry right now.
Contents projects have their own unique challenges, kind of with that, as any project really does in this industry. But one of the things that we see with contents projects is they're very cost heavy on the front side with both labor and consumables. And with that being said, contents projects tend to have a much longer production time frame, whereas like structural mitigation tends to start and end very quickly. Contents projects from pack out to pack back can range anywhere from 3 months to even, a year I've seen happen sometimes. And nobody wants to wait 3 months to get paid on their job, let alone a year, especially when they've put out all these upfront labor costs and, all these packing supplies they've paid for. So that was definitely a challenge that I ran into when I first started this department. What I've found to make that a little bit easier and less of a blow on us when we do those long projects is breaking out the billing and the estimating by phase. So as each phase is completed, we submit an estimate to the adjuster or the insurance based on what has actually been completed. So what that typically looks like is when we finish like a pack out, I'll bill for the pack out services only. And when we finish the content cleaning, I'll bill for the content cleaning services after that. And so then that typically breaks up our expenses and what we're able to bring in a little bit better.
Well, and that I think actually makes a lot of sense too, because it's unique opposed to a water mitigation or whatever the case may be. I think it's very unique and that makes sense to break it up that way, right? Because things can change from the time you put your first invoice estimate scope out there. We know things happen, things change. So, what better way than to kind of back yourself in the future by breaking it up for not just yourself as a business or your staff, but also for the carrier. It makes their job a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, I find it definitely makes the claim as a whole a little bit easier to digest. Contents projects tend to also be extremely expensive, so when they're kind of broken out into phases, it makes it a little bit easier on them to see the numbers a little bit smaller.
Right, right. And so speaking of that, I know that there's several types of scenarios where pack outs or contents are needed. And I think one that kind of stands out is hoarding, right? So how do you approach pack outs and contents as a whole in hoarder situations while maintaining, the safety and efficiency and respect for the homeowner, but also your staff?
Yes, hoarder situations can be extremely unique. And one of the most important things is making the homeowner feel comfortable and safe, and we never want them to feel judged in any kind of way. So that can be a little bit of a challenge to balance that along with trying to make sure that, your staff is safe as well. And typically what I do is when I inspect and have the conversations with the homeowner, I'm also assessing the job site itself for potential safety hazards without, trying to make the customer feel any type of way, just stressing to them that these precautions are extremely normal. Like there's nothing wrong with your house or your job specifically. We're always wanting to use proper PPE, so that they understand that we're not coming in trying to scare them in full, hazmat suits or embarrass them or any type of way. So I think it's always important to make sure they understand that it's extremely normal and this is just the process for all jobs.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because right, you're coming into their safe space. And so even just taking the time to walk somebody through the processes and procedures gives them a peace of mind, but also maybe helps relax them just a little bit and not want to hover. Because I think a lot of times in any content or pack out situation, right, that people are going to hover. But I think in hoarding situations, it's a little bit magnified, if you will. And so if
It
you took the
is.
time on the front end to kind of just explain it, right? Like, hey, this is what's going to happen. If you have questions, feel free to
Mhm.
ask at any time and just make it comfortable for them because, again, you're in their safe space. Um,
Exactly. Yep.
and then I think there's with the wildfires in California, I know you're not necessarily in California, but I know you deal with fires.
Mhm.
Um, what are some of the key factors that help you guys determine whether fire damaged items are salvageable or non-salvageable? And I know this one's hard because you also oftentimes have to kind of collaborate with the homeowner because even if it's completely a loss, there's still an emotional and conversational aspect to that.
Yes. And a lot of times what I tell my customers is just because it can be restored doesn't mean it should be restored. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to is, we can restore almost anything. It's the technology's out there, the techniques are there, but just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. And a lot of times insurances don't always want to pay for it. It oftentimes comes down to, is it worth it? Like if it costs more for us to restore it than it does for the insurance to replace it, we're probably going to deem it non-salvage. And what we always tell our customers is, listen, like we're not going to clean it, but if it's near and dear to your heart, hang on to it. But this just isn't something that we're going to be able to clean for you.
Yeah, and that makes it really hard too, because I think just as a whole, across everybody who handles any type of contents at all, there's just such a hard aspect of that and having to kind of, you're almost breaking your homeowner or business owner's heart. But I think to kind of really dive in, if it is cheaper to replace it, that's what the insurance is going to cover, right?
Mhm.
And if they wanted to pay out of pocket, they could, but sometimes even if somebody feels like it's salvageable and it's not, that's a hard conversation to have, right?
Yes.
Um, so speaking of this, when it comes to insurance, what are some of the common contents related coverage issues that you guys encounter and how do you guys handle them?
Yeah, so generally what we run into is more of kind of a misunderstanding or an underestimation of what the scope looks like for contents. I don't really run into situations often where people don't have enough coverage for contents. Most people do have some sort of personal property coverage within their insurance, and it's typically plenty. But what we've been seeing more often is just with contents becoming more of a popular service. Um, Many adjusters are surprised at how labor intensive and time consuming the process can be, especially if it involves like a full pack out and inventory and all of that stuff. Like it's not unusual for the content services to rival or even exceed the cost of structural mitigation at times. And I see a lot of adjusters just being shocked by this at first, and it takes quite a bit of education and explaining on our end to justify our costs. But a lot of times, what we're able to do is provide our documentation, our inventory, our photos, all of that stuff to really justify these large amounts that we're charging.
Yeah, that's key. And I also think that documentation is no different than anything else that you guys do on a regular basis. And, just taking that time to educate, right? Because it is newer
Mhm.
to the adjusting claim side because, I mean, we've always done it, but it's just more of a hot ticket item because it's happening more and more often, whether it's a fire, water loss, whatever the case may be. Contents are usually involved in almost every job. So I think that that's the other thing. It's starting to become more regular just because people are saying like, hey, I have to outsource, or hey, we have to pack this out. Oh, hey, we have to clean these contents or restore these contents. So I think it's just becoming one of those things where we're pivoting just a little bit, but it involves a lot of education.
Yes,
So
definitely.
right, right. And it's just going to take time. And, we're all working for the same end goal, taking care of our consumer, right?
Mhm.
Even though we're on different sides of the service, we're all there to take care of our consumer.
Exactly.
So with that being said, with contents and packouts just being more regular, more of a staple, if you will, in our industry, what are some pros and cons of having a dedicated contents team versus just utilizing maybe your technicians for the contents work?
Yeah, when I first started this department, obviously we didn't have a dedicated crew for contents. It was just whoever's available, we're going to use them. So that was, I definitely did get a little bit of experience with that before bringing in some specialized people. One of the biggest differences I see between contents and structural mitigation work is the way that it has to be approached. And the type of personalities that kind of thrive in each type of work are very different. Like we said, contents work often it involves the customer being a lot more involved in the process than they typically are on the structural mitigation side of things. People tend to be a lot more emotionally connected to their belongings rather than, the structure itself. So people have a lot of questions. They do sometimes tend to hover throughout the process, like we talked about. And the content staff is just often used to that more than the mitigation staff is. So they are a little bit more well equipped to handle those types of situations, those types of customers, all of the emotions that tend to be involved in that. And more than anything, I think that's what it comes down to is just having a crew that's used to people being involved in asking lots of questions and lots of repetitive questions, and they're able to continue to work while answering these questions and being empathetic to the customer and their situation.
Yeah, and I would definitely say not only does this person have to have like great people skills, they have to have attention to detail. They have to be okay with people hovering, asking questions along the way. Like we're literally asking for almost a unicorn to fulfill any position in content. Just because of the detail that's involved. And there's a pack out situation where you actually take the contents from said business or home and you've got to put it in another place. Well, with that being said, there's another step of inventory that is also involved. And so it's quite a big lift, if I'm being quite honest. You're not just in the space, you're actually moving things from one place to another and handling whether the cleaning or restoration of said contents, packing them back up and taking them back to the home. So it's a lot of responsibility also. And I think you said it really well. People are more attached to their belongings than maybe the structure itself. And so that makes it a little bit harder. People skills have to be top notch. Empathy and sympathy and compassion also has to be at the forefront of who is in this position. And, I think with contents making a huge mark on our industry, we're going to see it a little bit more often. And that means technology is going to start evolving some things that we have because I know a lot of content stuff is done by hand, if I'm not mistaken.
I know that some companies still do it by hand, their inventory processes by hand. We do use a digital inventory software, which makes it a lot faster and definitely helps with the customer facing side of things. They're able to see their inventory as well, just as we are, which definitely makes a lot of people feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, that's key. And to see and hear that technology is being utilized in contents is extremely important because I think us as professionals, but even consumers, if we can see it on our cell phone or email, it makes things a lot easier, less questions are asked, and just again, peace of mind, right? Peace of mind for you as the restoration contractor and contents professionals, but also for the consumer, right? Like they can see where their project is, where things are being handled and what have you. So I know we covered quite a bit in the last little bit. Is there anything you'd like to add, particularly about contents or maybe any misunderstandings or anything like that before we hop off?
Just, I think it's a very exciting that it's a growing service and it's something that's gaining a lot of traction within the industry. It's something I enjoy doing. It's a definitely unique part of restoration, and I'm really excited to see what happens. And I know the standard has been being worked on for quite a while, and I hope to see that come out soon.
Yeah, likewise. I think that also provides some groundwork for us as professionals if we're ever thinking about bringing content in-house or maybe even outsourcing to specific people. It's key to understand processes, procedures, the ins and outs. But I don't have anything else. I think this is very informational. And for those of you who are listening, if you hadn't thought about contents, I hope Jessica was able to maybe change your mind or maybe stem up some questions in your mind. And like I said, Jessica's available via LinkedIn, and she'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. As always, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.